So welcome to everyone. We have a session now, The Enlightened Self, and this is the first part of a two-part series. And with us is Dr. Prashant Kakoday, who will be reflecting on this topic, the enlightened self. And Dr. Prashant's background is in ENT surgery and associated with the Brahma Kumaris, spiritual knowledge, for more than 30 years. So we'll find out more about the philosophy as we go on. And also introduce myself. My name is Sarah. So nice to be with you today. So it'll be nice to hear. Let's get straight to the questions. The enlightened self. So what is this from your perspective? We know from religions, everyone talks about enlightenment, meaning a person that has achieved self-realization. Is this how you would understand enlightenment, the enlightened self?
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. It is a pleasure to be discussing this such a beautiful subject. And the word itself, enlightenment, is an uplifting word. And to understand this, first we may have to know what is the huge potential of all of us, the human beings. The nice image that is often used in this context, an eagle that thinks it is a chicken and behaves like a chicken and complains also that the life of a chicken and what all along it was an eagle. And when everyone treats him as a chicken, and he himself is so convinced that he is a chicken, and there's no question even that he is the eagle, for him to wake up, to come out of this and discover the sky, discover the eagle, that is the shift. One can call it enlightenment, self-realization, but that is the direction.
It's interesting. I think everyone can relate to this somehow, as if there's something more that we should be experiencing, and life is, there's something ordinary. So I like what you're saying. So there's huge potential that we all have. So what exactly is it that is the knowledge behind? So we obviously need some understanding. What is this ego? Would you like to say a bit more?
Sure. The broader understanding is that these eagles have been at this level of the chicken coop for a long time. And we tend to very much be influenced by the environment. It's like every parent knows how much their children are affected by the company. And so the kind of company we have has been influencing us, and this is over a period of time. We are not talking even one lifetime. It is the long journey of human race, and we are influencing each other in a downward direction. Spiritual model says like this. And to just give an example, if there is a gathering of 100 people and one person yawns at the back, people at the front also start yawning. One person at the back starts laughing, others also start laughing. One person is stressed and crying, others also start crying. They don't even know why they are crying. We are affected enormously by largely human society. And if we collectively are going in a down, then as if helplessly everyone else is dragged in that direction. And they may even know about eagle and they may even be convinced about this, but the spell It is more like this, not just forgetting about the eagle, but there is a spell of the chicken. And enlightenment would be being able to break that spell. That is where the real effort would be.
It's very interesting because I feel enlightenment sounds like as if the destination, but is it a process? Is it what is the word itself sounds like I've reached that point, and as you say, maybe people have these realizations, but these are strong words. It's a spell we're under. So, is it a process of becoming enlightened? Do we reach a point where we understand, and it's a case of being able to stay in that clarity?
Yeah, certainly. The beautiful process, because as you start the process, you are increasingly, moving away from this lower life, you know, uh, to understand this lower consciousness. It is at this lower consciousness we are having constant desire, and not just desire, sometimes undercurrent of desire, because you all the time feel something may change and should not change, some kind of expectation, constant possibilities of some kind of sorrow. It can be past disappointments or future worries. There is the constant ego and constant insecurity. This is the life. This is the subconscious life at that lower level of consciousness. And we sort of adapt that, and our whole behaviors outside is to deal with this, trying to address if people are becoming greedy, if people are becoming addictive, they are trying to address this undercurrent of their sorrows and their desires. And as we start, even start the journey, bring about even a small change, take steps, you are noticing a movement away from that mind. You are discovering a mind where there is, even for a short time, contentment, genuine contentment, freedom from desires and expectations and demands. You are discovering a mind where there is no reason for sorrow. You are discovering a mind where there are no ego. Ego means a huge thing. Ego is the one that makes us take offense, give offense. You are discovering a mind where there are no vices, and you are seeing from a different perspective. That's when you understand the potential. If an eagle starts using the wings even once, he realizes something very different. He knows chicken is not the only life, there is something more. So it becomes like a beautiful process right from the first day.
This is you're talking about such a huge shift, and great spiritual teachings talk about ego. And you don't hear that it's possible to be without ego. So that's one thing that came up for me. But also, often we tend to want to move away from situations to manage them. But what you're saying sounds like a lot more about we never need to retreat from anything ever. And other traditions, you would maybe have to, you've mentioned company, so we're greatly influenced. But if you have job, you have to go into all these situations, and you're in that environment. So it might be nice to hear about what is the might. Is it connecting to our inner light and might? How do we have this power to overcome these difficulties?
Sure. Connected with ego. Ego, its original roots just means I or I am, and there is always a feeling of I. But in this, we can create a false I. That is our little situation. We tend to create ego based on something that I am not. For example, I might create an ego based upon job, and job changes. Job is not me. We create ego based upon another person. I am the father, mother, this kind of, and so this huge department of ego. We want to be free from this false ego, and in fact, this false ego is our biggest enemy. If there is a one enemy for the eagle, it is the ego that I'm a good chicken that
Hmm.
holds one in this our lower
Mm.
identity. Everyone thinks you are a great chicken, and so one is busy painting the feathers and using the high heels and going around.
Mm.
Then one is stuck. So if one realizes these false ego are there, and we have to overcome this false ego.
Mm.
Easily said than done,
Mm.
because it literally means dying to what you thought is you and what was very important for you for a long time, whole life. This is what was you. You've been working for this all this life, and suddenly you are deciding to die to this. But small steps and realization, and each time you die, you are discovering the eagle.
Mm. And when you meet, those who have got such spiritual practice, there's a lightness there, and you see that life can be much simpler because there's a heaviness in trying to maintain this chicken, as you put it. And so that's an inspiration, I think, when we meet people who have managed to understand some of these secrets.
Yes, because it is like such a unnecessary luggage,
Mm.
that we are carrying. If we create just one ego, it is as if one demon inside that is having its desires, insecurities, and taking offense and want to give offense, and constantly want more, more, more. So if one becomes free from even one false ego, there has to be some freedom from all this, and proportionately you are discovering the eagle. In this case, eagle is just opposite. Imagine a glass, where there is a milk, glass of milk, and there is no drop of poison in it. And another glass of milk where there is a drop of poison, just a drop. It spoils the whole milk. In the same way, in our mind, if there is just one ego, leave aside many, one ego, yes, there is little desire, little sorrow, little anger, that's enough to spoil the mind. There is an option. That mind that we are talking about is a mind where there is zero um, desire, zero sorrow, and zero ego. If we are experiencing it even for a minute, you are discovering a mind where there is zero drop of poison. And this mind knows peace. This mind knows contentment. Mind knows bliss. And so we are using the word eagle, but it is going in that direction, discovering something huge. It is not just emotional richness. When there is that emotional stability, one can think more clearly, one can grasp higher things more clearly, one understands truth. So it is are not just nice words, but you understand what this whole thing about the physical reality and the reality behind. This direction leads to knowing God. So it doesn't remain nice reference or some concept. This is a direction to know the mind of God.
Everything has shifted. This when you were talking about the drop of poison, this is normal for I can say for myself. These little insecurities, and it becomes that's accepted norm. And so the way you beautifully put it, it is shifting our whole, we should have much higher aspirations in a sense. So in a way, and then something which that's this divinity that sounds like we have a lot to learn, and I can see myself. I feel I need to improve the chicken life somehow. There's part of the psyche that's yes, but So what stability does there need to be before we start to grasp this mind? Do we not need to have some kind of? Does it make sense?
Yes, yes. Like if we look at our physical life, everyone might say he first has to finish some exam and then he will take on the eagle. He may have to get a different job, or he has to get the children, get older, and then he will start this enlightenment. But it never ends. There are always something. Drama means this. New situations will come, and one is always left. The best time to start this is now. This whole setup that is there, whatever the environment and the package that is there, studies, exam, job, and this is the time when we can start the process. And one never regrets. Anytime you have done it, you will never regret. It is more like, say, I need food, I need a shelter, but I also need to breathe. I don't say I will find food first and I will find shelter and then I will breathe. The breathing
Right.
goes on at the same time as other things. If I stop breathing, it will even affect my, finding food. In the same way, here it is like a breath for the soul, and that has to go parallel to all the other things we do.
It's very clear, and so it's not a luxury, something extra that we need to get once something is right here. And as you were saying, it makes things clearer, in fact, perhaps how we live our lives. So, what is it that you actually do in this process? Can you give us an experience, or what is the?
Sure, you know this image of the eagle that we used. In essence, it tells us that we are subtle and invisible travelers, and that becomes quite exciting. You know, our reality is not gross; it is at the invisible level. We are eternal. Our world is eternal, and we are temporarily travelers, visitors here. So when poets and philosophers in history, prophets, they have spoken that we are guests and we are travelers and we are visitors, we could very easily interpret it at a gross level, but it makes total sense when we understand these visitors and travelers. They are invisible and they are associated with the physical. It is almost like this body is a temporary association. And just as we are in this room and we are temporarily associated with many things here, in the same way, the traveler is associated. Once I understand this, this is like a wonderful process and step that you realize, okay, I have to know more about this invisible dimension. It's just like the matrix. You are coming out of the matrix. At one time, you thought that is the whole reality. Now you are understanding there's something behind this. And this mind, that is able to, think of this dimension beyond, that itself has to become stronger. That is what the process is. So one is just seeing, okay, here is visitor, here is a guest, and this guest is invisible. And this guest is associated with things, and with the eye of the mind, we are seeing this guest. We can see this guest in the image of a star, for example. So this tiny star, it can be any image, but a tiny star, just to represent something that is invisible. And within that is a personality. There is a presence, and and he is safe and secure, and it is completely different. Everything I thought is I. This is where this analogy makes total sense. There's an eagle and there's a chicken. Eagle is associated with chicken. And in this case, the eagle is invisible. That is the difference. And whole thing becomes so sparkling, has the some light, and it is a nice word for this enlightenment. We are waking up to that dimension of light.
It makes complete sense. And as you say, this word light. And it's interesting, I can see how most of the time rushing around to create security here. When you said safe and secure, it almost brings the point of the spirituality, because helplessly sort of realizing that wanting to find security in the level of the chicken without realizing, and so busy, most of the time busy with that. So you're saying that actually the game is very different. We need to see what is secure in the that position of guest. And so feels like you're giving context to something which actually could be quite abstract in a sense, so it's very clear. And I know maybe for some guest and traveler has good associations, but also that also feels a little bit unstable, because that's why we don't want to face most of the time that perhaps things are temporary. So, what is the security of the traveler?
Yeah, nice. It was nicely put that we all the time are looking for security at a chicken level. But the paradox is we never can ever feel secure at this chicken level. For simple reason, we are going to lose everything. There is a death, and it is a changing world. So regardless of what we achieve, we are going to lose it, and there is going to be death. So what kind of security is possible here? And that precisely, makes us more insecure, and our whole life is geared around making ourselves secure. A huge paradox within us at that level of consciousness. But this insecurity also makes and creates within us a awareness of a victim. We feel we are potential victims, or in the past we have been victims. So in that state, you are immensely sensitive to danger. And if anything happens, anything is said, anything changes, it is interpreted as what might happen to me and what might happen to my attachments. And so there is a life, whole life is spent with the awareness of a victim and awareness of a beggar. So one is a beggar, and the whole time is begging for security, never achieves it. At the end, there is disappointment. You lost it all. There is a other option, and this eagle that we are talking about, the observer, he doesn't own anything here. There's no expectation. He's a traveler. What he is, he remains the same at the end of the journey. And as a result, he is eternally safe. All that has happened, he has woken up to that dimension, and he knows that his dimension is. So security is not an issue that he has to solve. It is not even in his mind. It's just like, say, an asthma patient. If one asthma patient is in this room, he is very much aware that there is oxygen in this room. You know what I mean? One who anyone else may spend a whole day in this room and may not even notice that there is oxygen in this room. You understand? And the same thing happens with this our waking state. When we are awake, there is no aspect. Security is not a aspect to think about or to solve. It is not an issue. Whereas in our lower consciousness, whole life is around insecurity and security, trying to address this.
It seems to be an important aspect. You're saying waking up as a more understanding of what this enlightenment is. We have a couple of questions here. So one question is, what are the most common main obstacles to experience enlightenment on a more constant level? So what are the main obstacles, most common main obstacles?
And the only obstacle is our ego. That's the only obstacle. Literally, if for 1 minute you are waking up at at a higher level, if the eagle wakes up for one minute, the ego will suffocate during that minute. And if anyone is suffocating, he will try anything, to get back his breath. And so, ego is not academic. His challenge for you is not academic. His challenge is for his survival.
So you're saying within us we have this part of us which realizes this is the right thing, and then there's another part which is sabotaging
Yes.
our efforts, which makes sense because most people who've been done something on a spiritual path, they talk about the benefits, but there's also another side where maybe they aren't practicing it. So how we make it constant. Yeah.
And in this context, everyone, spiritual effort makers and those who have slightest interest in this, that we may be wiser not to underestimate the ego. Ego can adapt, but not to feel now that we understood it, we have some become beyond it. No, ego will be there and may even get bigger because your attention is less on it because you feel you are enlightened.
That's what I was just thinking. Is it possible to have an ego around being enlightened?
Of course, ego will come in every possible form. Just like in the field of evolution, not the survival of the fittest, but one who adapts survives. Ego knows this trick. So ego all the time knows how to adapt, and this new kind of form will come. I am enlightened. So one is the eagle waking up. That is one thing, discovering the sky. But chicken saying, "I am the eagle, and I am so wonderful." That is another thing. So one is still at the chicken level, not really experiencing the sky, but has created a identity that it is the eagle.
So that question was from Anna. We have another question about ego here. She's from Karen. She wants to know, could ego also not be false? So you probably expanded a bit on it already. Is it ego by its nature is false?
As we said before, ego is a neutral term. And if it is a pure ego, if we use the word, or truth, ego based on truth, that is discovering the eagle. You are aware of this invisible you and self respect around that. and so moments, we experience it. That is very good, and you create time there. That is good. That is what will grow. That is the journey. But rest of the time, we could be just hanging around in the world of the chicken and just, saying that I am enlightened, and that is the false ego.
It doesn't sound like a very good place to be. To think one is enlightened at the level of an enlightened chicken. I don't think we want to go down that path. Yes, so we do have another question here, and it may follow on. This is another question from Anna. Is it inevitable that we will come to the light again? So nice question. So does the ego wake up? Is this sort of a destined?
It is inevitable because everyone is ego, and that is the truth, and truth will always prevail. One will discover the sky. But if that is not done with our own conscious process, attention, our effort, then it will be as if done for us through the pain. And any wrong posture we take, it brings pain. So already there is pain of all kinds, but it is as if the extreme pain, of different kinds that makes people to question and wake up and then fly.
What you're saying is such a profound, different game, because ordinarily I can see, most of the time we're trying to make each other comfortable at the ego level, and this conscious attention to play a different game, because you're saying ultimately it will come at some point, and that does make sense. Um, so, what is the strength that is needed? Because when you said the ego will suffocate, there must be something on the other side uh, to make the process light. What is the
Very good, and that itself is the answer. We need light to deal with this ego. And what it means, ego is ego in darkness. Ego has power in darkness, which means some kind of ignorance, some kind of confusion. Then only ego has power, and ego is, there, and that's why it will suffocate. You create light, just like if you create light, shadows disappear. In the same way, when you create full clarity, maybe for 1 minute, maybe for, that is all it can start with. Anything half-hearted doesn't bring results. If for 1 minute you create full light and you see the whole department of ego is absurd. Ego is created based on something that is extremely ridiculous. We took the example earlier. Someone may create a ego based on position. Someone may create a ego based on possessions. That he got a Rolls Royce, and he may create an ego that based upon something that is important because car is big. Now, if one feels it is absolutely absurd to do something like that, for example, right now, if one person was to think he's important because the chair he's using is big, he's using the chair just for 5 minutes, and he thinks he's important because chair is big and someone else's chair is small, so I am more important. And then we can see how absurd it is. If someone was to treat you like that, you will not accept it. Same happens in the full light. You realize everything here is so temporary that it's just like 5 minutes. Everything is temporary association, so unpredictable. nothing to do with you, and to use the letter I to this, to give ourselves importance based on this, to feel as if this is something to do with you, my, you feel it is absurd. In darkness, in confusion, it appears totally normal. Others might also treat you like that, and you also accept it, and you create this bubble of ego. And you create this light, and you are realizing how absurd that whole thing is. That's enough. We might lose it. As we said, there is a spell. In this light, at least you are seeing through that spell, you are seeing the absurdity. And only when that absurdity is acknowledged, we are not just superficially saying this is wrong, but you are feeling how strange to use the word I for something like a body, something like a role, and some possessions. It is so temporary. During those seconds, ego is not there, and so if ego is not there, there is no one there to suffocate. So if you are asking what is, our journey is not one of suffocation, but if it is process is taking place in light, in the light of clarity, then it is an enjoyable process.
Yeah, it feels it needs to be enjoyable because it's a big shift, and that's energy is sustainable as well.
Absolutely.
It just reminded me of a friend of mine. So she's a professional singer, but she was doing a job cleaning, and someone was praising her for that. And she wasn't taking that pride from it. She thought it would be ridiculous, which is what the word you were using. So that's easy when it comes to that example. But if we take a lot of self-respect from something, that it would be hard to have that distance. And maybe it's the identification. If we're taking from these limited things that we're doing, then it doesn't seem ridiculous. But I can see what you're saying very clearly in that example. So she had self-respect, which was much higher based on something else. So it's very interesting. We have a question here from Samia Sama. In the process of simplifying my life, I've noticed for each stage of simplification, some basic form of security is needed for spiritual effort. For instance, water, food. The process of simplification is fascinating. It makes one wonder about the security which is required and whether it is different for different people. So, what is it? What do you want to say a little bit more about the process of simplification and basic security?
Normally we think security is, as we were mentioning before, people, position, possessions. This is what most people think is security, and it is at a limited level. But anything where there is a change, if people, position, possession, if there is potential change to take place there, and if there is an end, we are deceiving ourselves to think that can be my security. And that's why to understand that none at this level can be my security. That is starting position. Let me know that if I'm looking for security, it has to be from the base that is eternal. It appears like we have to do it gradually, this kind of thing. But this particular step is a step of 1 second to wake up to what is eternal, and to know that there is an eternal thing. That is of 1 second. What is gradual is how often I come here. That is another. So it is possible for us today to realize that at gross level, everything is temporary. So I don't see security at this level. It is a deception to think it is. It is nice, and right now, this is nice and this is nice. I'm very much, enjoying this presence. But this is not my security. It cannot be mine. And same thing applies to people, position, possessions. And when I refuse to take security at this level, that will help me wake up to the security of the eagle and discover the sky, discover eternity. So this is a nice step for us. And then we are bound to lose this, as we were saying, spell and various other factors, we lose it. But we have the option to come back to this quality, come back to this truth more often.
I think this subject is very deep because we don't maybe realize the support that we are taking. So thank you, and I hope that answers your question. So we have a few minutes left, and just to mention that there is the next part of this two-part series, The Enlightened Self, which is next Wednesday, 27th. So it'd be nice to finish with a few minutes of meditation.
Sure. So wherever we are sitting, and we can make ourselves comfortable and consciously relax shoulders, and we feel free to breathe deeper. We feel free to keep the eyes open and remind ourselves the option of the spiritual sight. And with this option, we see the bigger map. With this sight, we can see the whole physical world as a very small story. It is small in size and small in significance story. This allows us to come to the world beyond the story. This is all. The world beyond is the invisible world, the real world. We see this as a world of light. See it in the image of a sky. This is the world of complete silence, world of stillness. This world is the home of these invisible travelers. This is that sky with living stars. And these living stars, they need nothing from the story. What they experience is a silent bliss. When there are no desires, there are no disappointments. All are like this. That's why this is a region of peace, region of contentment. World of God and the home of the souls. Our journey in the sky and on the earth, we aim to stay awake to this beautiful truth.
So thank you very much, Dr. Prashant, for joining us today and sharing a beautiful meditation. So look forward to meeting same time next week, and it might be nice to play with some of these ideas before we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you.